This is we'll get all this started in a couple moments. So this is going to be an experiment, and we're going to kind of work through experiments, right? So Ben and Melissa, let me hand these to you. We need to change things. We can change things as we go through this process. The point is that we can learn some things about how this kind of system works. Addison and Ryan, I'm going to get Ryan. How about I just leave these back here with you? Hand this to Ryan. Just when people come in, you hand them to them. So we'll just kind of see how this works. If you're coming in, we've got some handouts for you. So we've got several different small groups that are going to work out. The youngest group, singles and folks in their 20s, whatever, are going to meet back in the church library, which is right behind this wall. The 30-something group, kind of the middle group, and I should say that Kay Hensley is going to be kind of working with that group in there facilitating. Kyle Hughes is going to be facilitating the kind of middle group. So this group is people in their 30s, maybe if you have kids, maybe younger kids. They're going to meet in the young adult classroom, which is catty corner up there. Okay. And then the young group, people in their 40s, are going to be in the Stephen Ministry building, which is back in that corner. So, and this is really, you choose the group you want to. You may choose a group based on kind of your life phase rather than age. However you want to do that is fine. Like, I don't know anybody who wants to be like the small group police. Like, you go where you're comfortable, where you think think it makes sense for you to join the group. And we're just kind of work through this week. I know we got several people who said they want to come and be here, but they're not here this weekend. So let's kind of work things for several weeks and see how we go. The big thing is that when we finish this process at the end of April, we will work on finding a date in which we can all kind of gather and kind of do some evaluation. So maybe in May, early June, we take a picnic so that anybody with children, you can just bring the kids, teenagers, or whatever. We'll figure out a way to do it at River Park. And the kids, for at least about 15 minutes, we'll let the kids play and the teenagers play with them. And then the adults can talk about this whole process. So it's an experiment. And the great thing about experiments is that they can never be failures, right? You're going to learn everything. If half the stuff we do, we say, yep, we shouldn't do that again, we should do it a different way, then we have learned some stuff. And that's important for this congregation and how it's going to build up its ministry to young adults when you call your new pastor. So whatever we do here is going to be a success. So start thinking about which groups you might want to join with in small group time. We'll do this main section here. In a moment, I'll kind of begin the morning lecture. We'll end with a very brief, and I'll kind of focus on the brief Q&A time. And the Q&A time really is more about clarification. Like, what did I say that you didn't quite understand? Or what's one other piece of information you'd like to know before you go to your groups and have your discussion time? It's the Q&A for the lecture is not, well, Tim, I'm not sure about this idea. Tell me more, yada, yada, yada. That's what your small group time is about, for you all to wrestle with these ideas I'll be presenting to you, and for you to kind of work on those with your peers who are in a similar life stage as you, and you all work that out. If you have a question and you really want to talk to me about it later, I'm more than happy to grab lunch on a Monday or for us to talk on the phone. But the Q&A time at the end of this lecture time is not what that's about, if that can be clear about that. So we really want you to have these kinds of great discussions with your peer group together in a small group. That makes sense? All right, anybody got any questions about where we'll go afterwards? When you go to your small groups, we hope you'll have discussion time. And then at the end of that time, that you'll have a time period for just a check-in with each other and to also have some prayer time together. What we hope is that if you don't feel like you've got a lot of peers at Fifth Avenue, or people, but you're not with them a lot of times, you're not with them for prayer time, you're not check-in time, we hope this is a way for you to kind of help begin to develop those relationships. And if they've been superficial relationships, they begin developing even more because I know from my experience at the congregation I served in Charlotte that one key piece of our connection at our church was all those relationships with my wife and I and our peers as we raised our children with everybody else raising their children. And just having those peers to talk about all the wonderful and all the angst and the struggles that you go through with raising kids is a big piece. So we hope that this will be a way to kind of develop that for Fifth Avenue. All right. Any other questions on process, what we're going to do this morning? All right. So I've shared with you where we're going to be. The handout I gave you, the first page kind of just lays out our schedule, our plan. And then the next 2 pages are the scripture passage we're going to look at, and the back side is the questions for your small groups. So let's start this whole experiment with an easy question. All right, let's do an easy question. Who killed Goliath? David, right? That should be an easy answer, right? So let's just go to the Bible and let's see who killed Goliath to get that confirmed. So if you'll flip the page and go on the inside, we will see the passage from 2 Samuel 21, verse 19. Then there was another battle with the Philistines at Gob. And Elhanan, I'm not going to say his father's name, Elhanan the Bethlehemite killed Goliath the Gittite, the shaft whose spear was like a weaver's beam. Wait a second. What was that name again? Who is Elhanan? Anybody know? Yeah, nobody knows, right? Nobody knows. So what does it mean that it's saying he killed Goliath and not David? Some of you might be shocked that maybe somebody other than David killed Goliath. Well, if that's the case, you're not the first person. Chronicles, which was written 300 years after Samuel and Kings, has a different verse on that. So stick with your sheet. The next verse from 1 Chronicles 20, verse 5 says, and again there was a war with the Philistines, and Elhanan killed Lammi, the brother of Goliath the Gittite, whose shaft of his spear was like a weaver's beam. Whew, glad we got that cleared up, right? Glad it was his brother that he killed, not Goliath, because then that would mess with our whole understanding of the Bible, right? Does that clear everything for us now? Got that all straight? No, that just muddies the waters further, right? So why is Chronicles, which was written 300 years later than Samuel and Kings, which copied Samuel and Kings and rewrote it? Rewriting here means they changed it when they didn't like what was there. Sometimes it means they added information. Sometimes it means they took out information. Sometimes it meant they changed the information. And this is one of those examples. So rather than clearing things up, it's really muddying the waters. So we actually have 3 passages about what happened with Goliath. One is the traditional story that we've all read since probably about 3rd grade in Sunday school, from 1 Samuel 17, that David killed Goliath. Then there's this single verse from 2 Samuel that said Elhanan, who was also from Bethlehem, right? David was from Bethlehem. This guy was from Bethlehem. He's the one that killed Goliath. Then Chronicles says, we're going to fix that story. Actually, he killed his Goliath's brother, not Goliath. Now, 3 different passages tell us 3 different stories. 1 or 2 of those can be factually true, but not all 3. So the question is, how then do we understand this story about David and Goliath? All right, keep all that in the background, and let's go back to the story of David and Goliath. Now you'll see I've got the whole story on the next 2 pages. I've already taken out a few verses there, but most of the story is there. And I want to hit some highlights. You've got that to read through, but and to take to your class for your discussion time. So let's think about this story of Goliath and David. So after you had this big shock that maybe David did or did not kill Goliath. Here comes the story. As the story is set, the Philistines are one side of the mountain, and on another hillside, the Israelites are, and in between is this valley between the two armies. Goliath is 6'9" giant of a man at a time when most men were barely over 5 feet tall. The shaft of his spear was like a weaver's beam, too heavy for a normal man to carry. Notice that phrase in 1 Samuel 17 is the same phrase that links all three of those verses and passages about Goliath. Okay, somewhere along the line, this was the phrase that carried everything through. Goliath challenges any Israelite man to fight him man to man, and whoever wins the duel takes the battle. Why kill hundreds of men when you can have a one-on-one battle and one side wins? All right, I'm gonna go ahead and finish on, Angelia. We'll come to questions at the end, okay? So we can tell at the beginning, this is a mythic story, right? No general of an army is going to accept that situation as the plan for the battle. Certainly not Israel. Maybe Philistines would say that because they have this big giant who's going to do that, but the Israelites have nobody to fight Goliath, man to man. So no king or general is going to accept that. This is a mythic story. Okay, this story is there not to tell us some military battle or to tell us the story of a great boxing match, Ali Frazier, David and Goliath. This is a mythic tale that has some spiritual truth that the author wants to tell us. And that's what we're going to search for. What's the spiritual truth or truths this story is trying to tell us? Well, after setting the scene, introducing the villain, now the writer gets into introducing David. David is the polar opposite of Goliath. David is a giant. Goliath is a giant. David is a boy. David is the youngest of 8 sons. It was the supreme blessing to have 7 sons. David is the leftover son. He is the extra son. If you scan through those verses right there, you will see that, that David had 3 oldest brothers. His 3 oldest brothers are one of the soldiers that are with Saul and the Israelites. And the point for David in this story is that he is taking food from home by his father's direction to his brothers at the battlefield. He's not even supposed to be there. He's only there because he's the youngest boy and he has this task of helping to feed his brothers. When he arrives, his oldest brother scolds him for talking to others and accuses him of leaving the family's sheep unattended just so he can watch the battle. I think I've highlighted the verse. His brother actually says David has evil in his heart. Again, the writer is trying to give you this picture of David setting up the story between David and Goliath. The writers doing everything to make this look like an impossible battle. Goliath is a giant built like a 300-pound offensive or defensive lineman. David is a scrawny middle school boy who isn't even big enough yet to wear a regular man's armor. By the time in the story that Saul allows David to be the one to go fight Goliath, Saul tries to give David his armor. David can't wear it. It's too heavy. It's too big. He looks like a clown at a circus trying to wear this stuff. Again, the writer's trying to show us the impossibility of this battle. This also is a side story in the story. The side story is that Saul, who is the current king, is unfit to be the king. First, he accepts this ridiculous terms of battle, one-on-one against Goliath the giant, which is a losing proposition. A real king would have refused that immediately, and when Goliath came out, just sent his soldiers down there to kill Goliath, right? When David presents himself as the person who is willing to go fight the giant, Saul allows it, sending out this boy to certain death and giving up Israelite land based on the terms of the battle. Then he gives the boy his armor, including his sword. He might as well have given him the crown of off his head, right? This is what the writer's trying to show. The writer is emasculating Saul before us, trying to show Saul is unfit to be king and foreshadowing that David is the one who will be king. Notice that most of the story, 2 pages, I copied 2 pages, and that's not every verse in the story. Notice that all of this story is about leading up to the battle, not about the battle. David walks down the hillside wearing just his regular clothing, carrying his staff and his sling, and some distance away, Goliath laughs as if this is a joke. Am I a dog that you come at me with sticks? And then he gets serious and threatens David with death and how the birds and the wild animals will eat the flesh of his dead body if he doesn't run back up the hill. Finally, we come to kind of the truth of the story. The spiritual truth starts coming out in the story in David's response to Goliath. David yells back, "You come to me with sword and spear and javelin, but I come to you in the name of the Lord of hosts, the God of the armies of Israel, whom you have defied. This very day the Lord will deliver you into my hand, and I will strike you down and cut off your head, so that the earth may know that there is a God in Israel, and that all of this assembly may know that the Lord does not save by sword and spear, for the battle is the Lord's, and he will give you into my hand." Now, you know what happens next. This is the part we all remember, right? David slips a smooth stone from the river in the valley in which they were in, slips it into his sling. He runs towards Goliath. He's whipping this sling up and then lets it go. It lands flat in Goliath's forehead and he falls over. End of story. Down goes Goliath. The truth? The truth is that the Lord is a God who protects God's people. God rescues the faithful, the young, the poor. God makes the impossible possible. Now, as to whether David killed Goliath, I'm going to leave you with a thought. And this is projecting 2 weeks out in our series on David. Would a man that would steal another man's wife and kill him for her, would that man steal another man's greatest accomplishment and make it his own? Well, there's the stories for you all to discuss in small groups. Does anybody have any questions again about what I've shared with you, the information, any clarifying question you need before you go to your groups? Right, so you know about David, and now you know about Elhanan, and in your group, you can discuss both of those situations. Any clarifying question? All right, I'm going to let you ask that in your small group. Okay. All right, we understand the story and what I've shared with you. It is 9:53, so I think we're on time. So again, youngest group, those of you in your 20s, early 30s, single, back in the church library. Those in your 30s, if you have young children, you're going to meet in the young adult classroom up in that corner. Those who are in their 40s, have older children, middle school, high school, maybe college student, are going to meet in the Stephen Ministry classroom. Did you look to see if they have chairs? Okay, good. And if you don't know, if you don't like any of those options, Coram Deo is with us as well, and their classroom is right up there, and they'll be happy to have you as well. So you got 4 places you can go. Please head off in your groups, and hope you have a great discussion time and a prayer time together.